The newest radio voice for the Iowa Hawkeyes joins the show. Pat Angerer stops by talking about getting the gig, what's next, and getting ready to work with Gary Dolphin. All today, Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts, and you can find us on Twitter. While you're there, you can make sure you hit the like button on YouTube. You can watch us there. Give me a follow on Twitter at Trent Condon, as we have a big show for you today. The new radio voice, Pat Angerer, is going to stop by. Conversation with Pat talking about getting the job, what it took, and what he has his plan set on, as he will be your latest radio voice, taking over in the radio booth, working with Gary Dolphin, a relationship that they've had for a number of years. Talk a little bit about some past things as well, and a look towards the future with Pat Angerer. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Well, before we get Pat Angerer in here, I want to talk a little Iowa basketball. The other day, summer workouts began for the whole team. Over the last weekend, all the freshmen arrived on campus for the basketball program, at least in terms of scholarship players. That was an ability to see for the first time. Cooper Koch making his way in along with Chris Tajo, those two incoming freshmen. And right afterwards, workouts begin. They have a limited number of hours that they're able to practice together, but there are just some clips. And it's a 1-minute clip. Now, maybe the most exciting part of the clip for me was the old Iowa basketball logo with the exclamation part at the end. The O is a basketball from the 1980s, and I absolutely love that thing. I got a sweatshirt and a t-shirt with my favorite Iowa basketball logo on there. That was at the end. I would love to see that thing brought back. But that aside, it was just good to see the guys. Now, it's 1-minute clip, right? They're not going to be putting up highlights of missed shots or guys getting, swatted away. No, that's not what you're going to get. But there's a couple of reasons for optimism for this team. First, the increase in athleticism and what you're going to see on that end of the floor with this team, depending on, of course, who's out there and who's playing the minutes. You started the point guard position and bringing in Drew Thelwell, a guy from Morehead State, all-time winningest player in program history, a program that has had a lot of success, at least at the mid-major level. He's won a lot of games, and he won the most in program history. He's got size at 6'3", didn't shoot it very well, but at minimum, an adequate defender, something that they haven't had a whole lot of at the point guard position. You also throw in Cito Treyar, the transfer from Manhattan. Rebounding numbers that are immense. His defensive numbers, according to advanced analytics, are very good with Treyar. There's another part of it that you say, okay, this is something here. Iowa's best defender wasn't even close a year ago, was Owen Freeman. Now, one thing you need to see out of Owen Freeman next season is you need to see him stay out of foul trouble, understanding when to be aggressive, when you need to lay back. That's something that just happens with growth and getting more minutes in the Big Ten. And I think he is such a smart basketball player. He's going to figure that part of it out. You continue. Peyton Sandfort's not a great defender, but he's a willing defender. How about that? A willing defender. He'll try. Athleticism, not at the top of the heap by any means, as we saw at the NBA draft combine, but he'll be out there at least working to be okay on that end of the floor. Josh Dix, an above average defender on ball and off ball. He's got some size. He can do some different things. Josh Dix. What I'm getting at here is this team, certainly athletically and defensively, has a chance to be really good. And one of the guys that I mentioned is maybe the most intriguing, and that's the incoming freshman, Chris Tajo. Now, how the minutes are going to come in that front court and how they're all going to shake out, we really don't know. Where does Cooper Koch and Chris Tajo, the two freshmen, where do they fit in? Is Treyar a starter? We know Owen Freeman's going to be starting up there. Is Sandfort, do they play him at the 3? I think that's the likelihood. Dix at the 2. And then you got your point guard between Thelwell and Brock Harding fighting it out for that role. Increased athleticism, increased rebounding, increased defense. And you can say, kind of, that's all well and good, but it's still more of the same. You have an argument. I completely understand the people that just, until they see it with Fran McCaffrey in this program, they just can't believe it. I want to throw this out to you. It's the numbers of this basketball program over the last decade. As we know, last season, they missed the NCAA tournament for the first time in 6 years. That's something that Iowa was in rarefied air in college basketball, making 5 consecutive NCAA tournaments. And yes, I do count 2020 because they would have been an NCAA tournament team that season. This is what Iowa's done in the Big Ten. Last year, they finished 7th. That was the second to last mark in terms of standings in the Big Ten in the last decade. 7th this past season at 10-10 conference record. Tied for 5th the year before, 2023. Tied for 4th in 2022. A 3rd place solo finish in 2021. Tied for 5th in 2020. A 6th place finish in 2019. The low water mark was 2018. That's when they went 4-14. Finished in 11th place that season. 5th in 2017. 3rd in both 2016 and 2015. I see these projections, these prognosticators, when they're talking about the Big Ten as a whole this season, they don't have a whole lot of belief. I believe Andy Katz had them 17th or 18th in this new 18-team league with the additions of Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. That's crazy. Last year coming into the season, I thought best case scenario, they were going to be on the bubble team. And maybe with an upset or two at the end of the season, they could be a tournament team. That was the best case scenario. That's really what they were. If they would have beat Illinois at the end of the regular season, things would have went a little different in the Big Ten tournament. They would have been a tournament team, which when you look at what they had last season, it's pretty incredible. You substitute out Ben Krikke with, you think, better rebounding and better defense. Are you going to have the same offense? I don't worry about offense with Fran McCaffrey coach teams, and I don't think you need to either. But you throw in Troyar, Tajo, Koch, Dembele, didn't even mention him up front. This team is going to score, and maybe they can get a few more stops than they have in the past. Bart Torvik is an analytic-based site. He has his numbers up already for next season. He has Iowa 54th in the country, basically what they were this past season. I think they're going to be, I don't want to say much better than that because that's not fair. They are going to be better, though, I believe, than the 54th best team in the country, which is bubble territory, quality victories, how your resume looks. We know all that. All right, that aside. But out of that group, out of the Big Ten teams, he actually has them 14th in the Big Ten, ahead of only Washington, Minnesota, and Penn State. I guess it'd be 15th, right? Regardless, you get what I'm saying here. 15th in the Big Ten. I don't see it. And if you're 15th in the Big Ten, you're the last team in the Big Ten tournament. That is another change this season. The Big Ten tournament this year is going to look a whole lot different than what we're used to because of the additional teams. That means that some teams are going to be left out this season. Teams 16, 17, and 18 will not be invited to the conference tournament. In the opening round, the first round, it'll be the 12 against the 13, the 10 against the 15, and the 11 against the 14. This is set up in a way that is very similar to what we've seen recently with the ACC, with them having 15 teams in their conference, with Notre Dame obviously being a full member for basketball. The winner of the 12-13 game moves on to the 5 seed. Winner of the 10-15 game goes against the 7. 6 seed gets the winner of the 11-14, and then the 8 and 9 play then in that second round. Finally, we get to the quarterfinals, and the double bye is still there. For the top 4 teams, they will be in a double bye. I say at minimum, Iowa is not going to be, well, A, not going to miss the conference tournament. Secondly, is not going to be playing in that opening day. I believe anything short of a top half finish this year is going to be a disappointment because Fran McCaffrey has shown year in and year out his teams will do that. Now, will they do more than that? I get it. I understand you want to see more. However, I think they're going to be in really good shape. Let's talk some football. Pat Anger, the new radio voice of the Iowa Hawkeyes, joining Gary Dolphin in the booth. Had an opportunity to catch up with him earlier in the week. That's coming your way. Talking with Pat Anger as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Well, we're down to Game 4 of the NBA Finals. It would be great to be there, see that high action in person, and you can do that with the Gametime app. Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You look across the landscape, so much going on. Maybe you want to see Caitlin Clark. She's coming back here to the Midwest, a little closer to Iowa, against Minnesota coming up here in the coming weeks. Whatever it is, they have you covered with Gametime. I love the all-in pricing, not having to worry about those crazy fees that you can find at other ticket websites. Instead, you hit the all-in pricing, toggle that feature over. It's going to show you your total upfront, know exactly what you're getting. And speaking of knowing what you're getting, how about knowing where your view is going to be? Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Plus, the lowest price guarantee, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA's finals tickets, college basketball, right around the corner, college football, and a whole lot more. Do it all with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That'll get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Let's get to the new color analyst for football at the University of Iowa. He's Pat Anger, former Hawk, former Colt, former Bettendorf Bulldog, and he joins us. Pat, Trent Condon, my name's Ken Miller. Thanks for coming on, Pat. Congratulations, first of all. How are you?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind these last couple of days, that's for sure. You can always tell when it's your friends sending you a comment because they say something very negative first.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah, so it's been fun.
I guess. So if you don't mind, can you take us through the process from the time you thought, maybe I'm good. I'm going to throw my hat into the ring to, what it kind of entailed, if you don't mind sharing, what went into to get you to this point where you were officially named yesterday as Ed Podolak's replacement?
Yeah, so it was about a month and a half ago, I would say. They reached out to kind of a select few. They had a list, and just to kind of gauge interest. And at that time, I had never really thought about it. I knew that Ed was retiring, and I thought, hey, maybe it'd be awesome. Ed was great, just a huge part of my Hawkeye experience as a fan and obviously as a player. But it never really was something that I really put too much thought into. And then I asked my wife, obviously, because, you got to ask the boss.
Yep.
She was like, yeah, I'd love to have you out of the house if possible.
Yeah.
And, so I told him, I'm like, yeah, I would love to, see it through and give it a shout. And obviously just very happy that they even considered me. And then we did a Zoom interview, and then they took a couple, after that, we did a game simulation. And really during that game simulation was when I found out how much I loved it and enjoyed it. And obviously Dolph is a pro and makes it easy. And I've said this before, I could put my dog up there and Dolph would have a great time. It'd be a good show. But yeah, and then found out on Friday, and, it was great, awesome thinking about it. And then when they told me, then it's like instantly terrified and nervous, but also very excited.
What's it going to be? Because you don't have a radio background. You don't have a background calling games really in general. What's going to be now the preparation period going forward as we lead up until that opener against Illinois State? What are you going to do? Obviously, guys are a lot different than when you were playing, and college football in general is a whole lot different. What's the preparation going to be like for you in the coming months?
Yeah, I was up there at the facility on Thursday doing a career night talk with some of the players, and everybody's like 9 feet tall and strong and 240, and I'm like 5'11", and fat. So it's definitely evolved quite a bit. I'm going to try to take it. I'm going to prepare for it like I prepared when I played, and I'm going to lean on Dolph a lot. And I'm going to lean on Ed. And I have a lot of buddies in the media. Obviously, I think the Iowa media has been so good to me throughout my career and throughout the years. There's a lot of people that I'm going to be leaning on. And obviously, the coaching staff has been great. And, what I'd really like to do is get up and get to know the players. Because I think through their successes and failures, it's going to be a lot easier to talk about, and going to be even more excited for these kids when they do great jobs just by knowing them and knowing what they came from and knowing their struggles. So yeah, I'm gonna put a lot of work into it, and obviously I know nothing. I don't even know what I don't know. But I'm fired up about it, man.
Since the end of since your playing days ended, your NFL career came to an end. I think a lot of people, Pat, would say that they associate you now with your friendship for your former teammate Brett Greenwood, and your friendship and what you have meant to him, and him, of course, getting back to Kinnick and you being at his side. How's he doing, if you don't mind me asking?
Brett's doing great. Brett's a warrior, and he's stubborn, just like all of us were back in 2009, and that's what's kept him alive. And being done playing was hard. It was hard to say the least. And I didn't, mentally, I wasn't ready to be done, but physically I was. Obviously, they don't like slow, short guys in the NFL. It's a weird thing. I don't understand it. So being around Brett and being there twice a week has done more good for me than I think it has for him. Because really, for me, I'm just there making jokes and messing things up, and he's yelling at me. But watching his fight and watching his journey allows me to be a part of something that's great. And when you're done, you miss the culture, you miss the camaraderie, and you miss the purpose. And Brett's really given me that. And being a part of this and being a color commentary guy now, which is weird now that I'm in media, like super strange to say that. But that's another thing to fill that void and to be around a program that has just been so good to me and my teammates. And Iowa football, it's not about just your 4 or 5 years there. It's about you're a Hawkeye the rest of your life. And, if I'm not there for Brett, or if our teammates aren't there for Brett, well, then everything that we said when we played, was lies. And that's not what Coach Farron's taught us. And that you got to be a good teammate. We're teammates forever.
And you got a new teammate now with Gary Dolphin in the radio booth. Pat, with that, I want to go this direction. So I've listened to you back when you were doing a weekly podcast with Tom Kakert, our buddy over at Hawkeye Report. You're knowing a little loose with the language. This is radio, and there are FCC rules. I mean, has Learfield already had the conversation with you? I'm sure other people have mentioned, got to watch that language a little bit on those radio airwaves.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. We haven't really had that conversation yet. I think that they know that I understand that, and I'm, got to be a professional. And, when we were doing that podcast, I was going through a transition period of my life, and it was probably the first time I was able to really speak freely and not really represent an organization or a team or anything like that. I was a little fired up there back in the day when I was just getting out, because I didn't really have a lot of outlets. But fortunately, I've got 3 young kids now, and I've matured. It all obviously depends on who you ask, and it depends today. But being in the business world now and being in a professional setting and being able to talk to people, you can't say crazy things, believe it or not.
Pat, as many games as you played, I remember you. They couldn't find a reason to keep you off the field when you got to Iowa. You had a lot of will to be out there. But what I recall, and I've said this numerous times, whenever your name has come up over the years, that the one game I remember more than the others about you, it was not at Iowa. It was not in the pros. It was in the state championship game against Southeast Polk when you. Oh, is he or isn't he going to play? Because essentially you played with one arm in that game. Do you remember that game, and how hurt were you? I'll never forget the impact that you had, as hurt as seemingly you were.
Yeah, I broken my wrist, and I had a broken back. I had 2 fractured vertebrae in my back, and so I had to sit out a couple games going into that. And fortunately, my teammates got us to the championship. And for me, it was just like, that was my dream, girl. Like I never wanted to go to college. I never wanted to go to the NFL. I didn't have dreams to do that. I wanted to play for Bettendorf, and I wanted to bring home a state championship. So being able to be there and have that opportunity, I wasn't going to let that thing slip. And I think I pretty much just blitzed every play that I wasn't supposed to do, but it worked. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
That process then, making that jump, because as Ken mentioned, that was one of the most eye-opening football players. You make your way to Iowa. You're not real fast. You're not real big, but you just found a way to get out on the field. Talk about that transition going from high school to college, and maybe something that you're going to be able to help some of these guys early in their career, making that transition, what it's going to take to be a Big Ten football player.
For me, the maturity was just all shoulders up. I did a lot of wrong things, a lot of immature stuff when I was younger, and I always worked hard in the building and always worked hard in the weight room. But I didn't prepare like I was a starter when I first stepped on campus. We had Chad Greenway and Abdul Hodge, and we had Mike Klinkenberg and Mike Humpel like 4 studs. So in my mind going in, I was like, okay, I'll probably junior year, I'll start. But there was a game sophomore year, we were playing up in Wisconsin, and all the linebackers had gotten hurt except for me and a true freshman. And instead of putting me in, they put the true freshman in and burned his red shirt. And that was back when, hey, if you play one game, your red shirt, it's burned. And so it was a big turning point in my life. And I could have gone a couple different directions. And there was a time where I was even thinking about giving up football. But what really helped me out is I looked in the mirror and I took ownership for the position that I was in. I didn't play because of decisions that I had made. I didn't play because they couldn't trust me. And if you're playing middle linebacker in the Big Ten, you got to have the full trust and respect of your teammates and your coaches. And I didn't have that. I hadn't earned that yet. So it was really, I flipped a switch there and focused my whole life on being as good of a Hawkeye as I could be. And I made Iowa football the most important thing in my life. And it wasn't overnight where I had success. I didn't really start until the 3rd game my junior year. And then ended up being all Big Ten, and then next year, All-American. And it's interesting, the choices you make in life. At sophomore year, I was thinking about quitting. And 2 years later, I was an All-American. And, if you do things the Iowa way and you listen to the coaches, like, they have the answers to the test right there. They've been through it. They've seen everything. And I'm so fortunate that I chose the right path, as opposed to who knows where I would be, if I gave it up.
Will you miss the quote, old Big Ten, Pat?
It will definitely be different, I think, with everybody coming in here. But I think they're going to have to adjust us. They're going to have to adjust to how physical we play.
Nebraska had to.
Tough. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think they're still adjusting.
I think so too. Yep. It's true.
It's a different ball game, and it's a fight every single Saturday. It's a fight, and I love a good scrap. I love it. I love a 10-3 game. I love a 6-3 game. I'm a defensive guy. Yep. Hey, it's more time on the field for the linebackers to make tackles. Right. We're ugly enough, but we need some TV time.
No doubt about it. Well, speaking of that linebacker group, the getting Nick Jackson and Jay Higgins back for another season. I mean, the starting point there. Now, you've also seen the defense that has morphed, and don't see those 3 linebacker sets out there quite as often with the cash position now for Iowa football. Your thoughts, though, watching those guys last year, Jackson making his way in from Virginia, and what we've seen and what Jay Higgins has built himself into these last couple of years.
It's been so much fun, and Phil's doing an amazing job. And obviously, everybody that knows Phil knew that he was going to do a tremendous job. We miss Norm. I miss Norm every single day. He's the man, Yeah. Sorry. Mm-hmm. But oh man, get a little choked up there. But watching our linebackers, Jay and Nick, I mean, those are 2 legends. We're very lucky to have the opportunity to watch them when we do.
Yeah, I remember Norm coaching the media as to what to expect against Georgia Tech.
Oh, that was
and
great.
That offense, and I can understand how much he meant to you, no doubt about it. Well, Pat, listen, congratulations. It's going to be great to hear you. Podolak did a terrific job. You and Dolph, I think, are going to be terrific in the booth, and we look forward to hopefully imposing you on once or twice during the regular season as football season arrives. Pat Anger, congratulations! Thank you for doing this for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Great stuff there, Pat Anger. A little emotion talking about his former defensive coordinator Norm Parker, and excited for it. There were the finalists that we talked about in the past. I think this is as close to a home run as can be hit. Radio, still important. The radio broadcasts of football are still incredibly important. And to have somebody that is younger, to have somebody that is energetic, to have somebody that Hawkeye fans, young and old, know, I think this is going to be a great thing. You couple it with the personality that Pat has, and you heard it there during the interview. I think we're in for a fun listen with Pat Angerer and Gary Dolphin up in the booth for Iowa football. We continue here, Locked On Hawkeyes, and a chance for you to help out the Iowa Swarm with a new drink. We'll tell you about that as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Big thank you to each and every one of you for being with us. And a thanks again to Pat Angerer for joining us here earlier in the week. Pat was joining myself and Ken Miller during my radio show, Miller and Condon on 106.3 KXNO. As we wrap up, a new chance for you to help out by drinking some booze. Not a bad thing. Exile Brewing Company, who had the Swarm beer this past fall and still continues to be on shelves, they have come out with a new vodka soda. It is just very simply Swarm vodka soda. It is a blackberry lemon concoction. It is made with vodka soda, got the vodka from Swarm inside of it, and 20%, this is the important part, 20% of all Swarm vodka soda's revenue is donated to Iowa Swarm. This is an opportunity for you. If you like to be out on the golf course, beer a little too heavy out there. You want something a little bit lighter. Maybe you're not a beer drinker. Whatever it is, this is yet another way to help out the Swarm Collective and help out those student athletes out there. I'm excited to get my hands on one, and we'll give you a full review coming up. Speaking of that, the beer that came out last fall and is still available right now, heard some talk that potentially a little bit of a change to the formula is going to be coming up for this football season. There is some talks about that, maybe a little less hoppy. If that was something that maybe pushed you away a little bit, potential change coming a little bit, still going to remain basically the same, but a touch lighter with the new batch coming out there of the Exile beer and the Swarm beer that'll be there coming up this year. It's a changing world in athletics, as we know. The news today, the Big 12 looking at not just private equity to bring in some kind of cash infusion to them, but also selling their naming rights. It's coming, folks. And this is changing a million miles a minute. College athletics, as we know it, we have to be prepared. As we just talked about, you have the collective. What that is that going to go in-house in the athletic department? Ultimately, it takes over for that. What it's going to look like, I don't know. And they can change college athletics, and then all these things can evolve, and it could be better for the players, and that is great to see. I am not somebody that is going to deride that. But I still wonder about the end game. I know me personally, I'm always going to be cheering on the black and gold. I'm always going to be a Hawkeye fan. Nothing that they can do to athletics is going to change my relationship with this team, with these programs, and the memories going back. You can't take that away. It's not a professional franchise that can move to a different city, right? We're always going to have the Iowa Hawkeyes. And even as it changes and evolves, and sometimes you look at some of the things and it can be frustrating, for me, it's still about the Hawks. We're with you each and every day here during the summer months. Locked On, we got you covered. Doesn't matter what team you are, your favorite Major League Baseball team, NBA, NHL, NFL, whatever it is, we have you covered here on the Locked On Network. Not only that, we also have national shows covering each and every league. Locked On Big Ten, if you're a Big Ten fan and want to see what else is happening inside our world. We talked about that a little bit earlier as it pertains to basketball and that front. And Craig does a great job over there on that one with Locked On Big Ten. Thanks for being with us here today. Back with you tomorrow. Go Hawks.